Thank you so much for joining session 2 of Government Contracting 101. You may remember the last time we spoke that we talked about the request for proposal process and the importance of understanding what is required for every consultant or contractor on a project. And you must do your due diligence to understand the operations of not only the client but of the prime contractor if you are a subconsultant or a subcontractor. We also talked about understanding if it is a governmental agency, then you must be aware of Davis-Bacon, which is the responsible wages, and determine whether or not your firm could manage to pay your employees the additional rate in addition to benefits for the life of the contract. For example, if you are a plumber and you normally pay your employees $20 an hour in benefits, for some governmental contract, the rate may be $30 an hour. Can you cover that plumber for the duration of the contract at $30 an hour? And then what happens if once that job is done and that plumber is accustomed to being paid $30 an hour, do you lose the plumber? So those are the things we suggested that you consider as you pursue a request for proposal with a governmental agency. That was in session 1. Go back to session 1 if you want to hear more about the things we talked about, including bonding and insurance, etc. So this session number 2, we're talking about the award. What happens once you win the award? Congratulations, and now you're ready to perform on the job. There are things that you should keep in mind as you go through this process, and that part of it is building the relationship so that when you do have a pitfall on the work, on the contract with maybe the manager or payments, etc., you'll know who to call because you've established some sort of rapport. So first and foremost, it's important for you to know who the contract manager is for the entity, the client. Reach out to them, introduce yourself so that your firm is not just a vendor number, but rather a name and a face. Always make yourself available, and at the end, offer your cell number. Say, I'm always available. Even if you are working with a prime, it is important for the client to know who you are personally, and it's separate from the prime contractor, because if there are direct bid jobs that client does and your company performs that work, then they can pick up the phone and ask you to submit a bid just without even having to figure out who you are and what your services are. And also, if you have a challenge in terms of payment, etc., not only are you able to call someone and say, hey, what's the status of the payment, from the client's perspective versus the prime's perspective. And some people say, well, you don't want to do that because of protocol, but well, if you are owed $100,000 on a job and you can't seem to get answers, if you've already developed that relationship, then you will know where your money is and when you will be paid. So if you're shy, then don't be in business because it's not for you. The next thing is, I know you should already have a relationship with the prime contract manager because you submitted the bid and won the job, but it's important to understand who they are as a person. Do they respond to emails? Do they prefer you call them? Are they more available in the morning or in the evening? Who is their direct contact? Who else can you talk to that will get an answer from them if they're too busy? These are the relationships you must develop with the prime contract manager. So when you do have a challenge in terms of payments or performance or supplies, there is a relationship there, and then they will be more inclined to support you in terms of resolving any issues or matters. Also, they will keep you in mind when they are looking to pursue work outside of this client that you're partnering on, and maybe include you in future opportunities. Or it's your opportunity to develop the relationship and tell them, I love working with you. I would love an opportunity to work with you further. That's another thing to do. But more importantly, it is to build a relationship so that before you have a challenge or an issue, you know exactly who to call, and it won't feel uncomfortable asking them, hey, I need your help, or hey, have you guys thought about this? This is what our company can bring to the table in addition to the work that we're already doing for you. Thirdly, and I think this is the most important part, when we talked about this in session 1, we talked about understanding wherever you're bidding at in terms of an agency or private entity, what their payment process and plan is important, but knowing who are the people that process your payments is key as well, or the people who know where to call to find out the status. So if you're owed $50,000 on a job and you don't know where that payment is, and you know on the client side who processes the payments, they can tell you, well, it's on day number 10, and you know the process is 15 days, and we just have 2 more steps and it'll be approved for payment. That gives you some relief. Or if you call and they say, well, it's on day number 7, it has 4 more steps before it is approved, but it has been through pencil review, so it may not take the actual 7 steps. And as a small business, that will certainly give you some relief, knowing that payment is on the way, especially if it's closer to the end of the month and you got to meet certain account receivables. This will give you some comfort, knowing that you're going to meet, once again, your deadlines for all of your vendors and employees. So understanding who the person is, what are the steps? Are there 5 steps to get paid? Are there 3 steps to payment? Once it's reviewed, how many days does it take to get paid? That process you should know and be comfortable enough of asking people where your payment is, especially if it has not been issued in the time that the agreements say it will be issued. Lastly, you should also request, normally when you bid on a job with a prime, they give you an agreement that outlines your insurance, your payments, etc. But they do not give you the master agreement. The master agreement is the agreement between the prime and the client. This really spells out what the requirements are for the insurance. So let me tell you why this is important. A lot of times, if you're a subcontractor or subconsultant, the prime contractor will impose upon you insurance requirements, let's say, of $2 million for a job. But if you are not looking at the master agreement only requires the prime to have $500,000 for the job. So if you're having, this gives you a greater ability to negotiate. If you say, well, if the master agreement only requires $500,000, why am I, as a small business, being required to carry $2 million? Because the prime wants to protect themselves. That's why. But there's a significant cost from $500,000 to $2 million on coverage. And if your firm only has $1 million, that increase to $2 million may take you up a couple of thousand a year. So that's why it's important to understand the master agreement. Also, I've seen instances where the prime has said, well, we will pay you within 60 days of receiving payment, a paid approved invoice from the client. But if you look at the master agreement, it says all subconsultants, subcontractors must be paid within 15 days. So you wouldn't even know your rights if you did not have access to or reviewed the master agreement that determines all of the policies and practices for that contract. So 90% of the time, the primes do not give you this document. You must ask for this document. You must ask for this document and review this document and compare it to your agreement. And if there is something in your agreement that brings greater harm or distress to your company because it does not align with the master agreement, or simply because it does, then you need to bring it up before you sign that contract. So if they're giving you the agreement between you and the prime, at that time, ask them for a copy of the master agreement so you can review both agreements simultaneously. Otherwise, you're going to get into a situation and you're going to find out, for example, there was a small business that was having challenges with receiving payments, about 8 months behind, and the prime contractor repeatedly told the business, we will pay you when we are paid by the client. Oh, the client has a new software and all of their contracts have been struggling to meet payment requirements, but we know it's 8 months and we will pay you when we've been paid. Now, this was a small certified disadvantaged business enterprise, but in the master agreement to the prime, it clearly states that all subcontractors and subconsultants must be paid within 30 days of an approved invoice. The prime had been approving the invoices for the subconsultants and the subcontractors and holding them literally for 8 months. And because the firm owners, the subcontractors and subconsultants, did not have a copy of the master agreement, they were not aware that they were supposed to be paid every month. And we know if payments are not timely, what happens? It impacts your payroll, it impacts your vendor payments, it can impact your credit. But because the small business did not have a copy of the master agreement, the business was not aware. And luckily, the business did find out that that was the requirement of the agency. And moving forward, that vendor was paid monthly. So this is a perfect example of why it's absolutely necessary to review the master agreement. Do not get excited about having the award, and I know it took a lot of work to get to that point, if you do not understand the requirements of the master agreement, because more likely than not, it is more beneficial for you than the actual agreement between you and the prime contractor. So as small businesses, it is imperative to protect yourself, to become educated not only on the agreements and the contracts between the prime and the client, between yourself, your company, and the prime, but also it's important to educate yourself on the personalities of the contract manager, the prime contract manager, the accounting team. And that takes a little bit more than just, performing the work. That requires putting on your calendar, make a call to the contract manager to check in. Putting on your calendar, schedule a site visit, do a site visit to check on my workers at the job. Those kind of extra steps will demonstrate the value of your company, and you'll be surprised how much information you gain from those little nuggets in terms of just chatting with people, just going to the job site, and what you will learn. So thank you so much for joining. This has been another lesson on Government Contracting 101, session number 2. In session number 3, we're going to talk about the post-award, things you should do to protect your company if you are, once you've completed a project, how you take the elements of all that you've done and learned and use it to help further market your capabilities for more business, how you work to get more business or work more with that prime contractor if you have determined it is a good fit for your business and that the relationship was very positive. How do you benefit in that regard? And how you can continue to grow your company just by simply understanding government contracting. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to sign up for text alerts, and so that you can receive notification of our next video. Bye-bye.